This is the Fulton Podcast.
What do you think of that, Craig?
I agree. that was a lot of deep. I don't know.
That was a lot of yeah.
I don't know a lot about like Cold War era.
I have an interesting.
No,
I have an interesting.
It's interesting. I'm listening and I'm trying to soak it all in. I'm like, I know all these words he's saying, but the order they're saying them. No,
cool.
It's very interesting to see, like, because you're right. Like the Mission Impossible TV show, like the original TV show, was in that era of, you know, they went to Cuba to help stop stuff there, or they went to Europe, and it kind of was in that Cold War era thing, and they kind of still have those roots.
Yeah.
Well, let me put an interesting twist on that, because the villain in this Mission Impossible movie, which I thought was kind of intriguing for me, is the way in which he was kind of unbeatable. You know what I mean? It's like you kill him, you don't kill him, you still lose.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's why John was talking about the clock, right? They're against the clock, but the villain knows that. And that's kind of an interesting thing where the villain has set it up to mess with Ethan Hunt as bad as he can.
Right.
You know, and it's kind of an interesting thing because it ends up being very personal to the audience, I think, when you're like, oh man, he really has set this up as an Ethan killer. You know, this is not just a problem anymore. Like in Mission Impossible 3, you know, they give him an impossible thing to solve because they know he's the person who handles impossible problems. Right. But now we've built an impossible problem that was intended to be impossible for Ethan to handle. And I thought that was an interesting thing, and how people come out of the woodwork to help him out a little bit, you know, where people don't know what they're doing a lot of times, and you just sort of chunk them into the gap. I thought that was a very interesting thing, and that's why we get in that fight with the villain at one point. And it's funny because I'm sitting there going, well, the villain's going to die anyway. We know that. All he's doing is delaying you, and he knows it. And it's kind of scary how he does that.
Right. Well,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know how it's going to end, but it's like, what's going to happen along the way?
Yeah.
Is Benji going to die? Is
What's
her face going to die? I mean, we know the nuke can't go off, but can he delay them enough that something still happens, something negative still happens?
And Ethan can't possibly be there. You know, he can't possibly solve this problem. Yeah, and I think that's something, you know, they separate him away. And, you know, attached to that, I found one of the most intriguing parts about the plot for me, and maybe this is I don't know how this stuff all pans out exactly, but I know as a guy myself, you know, this notion that you can try and take care of the people around you is very strong in most men. You know, they have this idea that you want to, right? You see things going wrong, or you see people and you see them in need of protection. And that's what Ethan Hunt is embodying as a character. He embodies this, take care of everybody. And that's why he's got a team.
That's kind of what makes him different from, like, James Bond.
Yeah, because James Bond doesn't care. People die around him all the time.
He does care.
He doesn't care.
He's just, the emphasis is very clearly more on him as a, you know, flamboyant and just competent character. You know, you almost really never see him in a lot of the older films dealing with a situation where he's seriously having a problem. He always retains his cool. He's never, and then it's like everybody was like, oh, the Daniel Craig movies, he finally bleeds. You know?
Yeah.
like,
well, and that's why I think Ethan Hunt has this sort of American style to him.
Well, right.
You know,
he's
whole
just
feeling
so much
like
more practical.
I got to save everybody. You know, and we think about the America the way, that way, I guess you could say, you know, where we're like, oh man, well we got to go fix a problem somewhere, or this other place. And one of the things I thought was really interesting about it is the women in that movie, you know, not all of them are, you know, like one is his former wife, you know, formerly his wife, you know, who couldn't make that relationship work. Because, you know, she was like, I'm going to be in his way, basically.
Also another interesting.
And she goes off and she tries to make another life. And I thought it was kind of interesting how she basically tells him, or I don't remember if she tells somebody else, but she tells somebody, I forget. But basically, no, she tells him. She says, because of you, I can have a life.
Yep.
You know, because you exist, I can have a life. And I thought that was a really interesting thing, because if you think about it, like I said, the American hero, right, that is Ethan Hunt. And this is somebody going, no, I need you. And you're doing good things. And this stretches you like nothing else, but you're the right person for this job.
Right.
And I thought that was an interesting,
it was
kind of a pro-American message that I don't hear a lot of places.
But it was a very primal kind
very primal.
exaggeration of the sort of, you know, knight errant theme. You know, you have this character. Well, maybe not knight errant so much as knight protector guardian person, and it's like Ethan, even though he has no superpowers, is essentially in the world of Mission Impossible, the series. He goes from being this guy who's a fairly competent secret agent to being, you know, an embodiment of destiny, of mythic proportions. He's the mythic secret agent, you know. He's he's like the patron saint of secret agents at this point. And that's I think it's a legitimate artistic representation and is very interesting in that way.
And the interesting thing
is
that
very realistic,
makes,
but it does work on that kind of, you know, archetypical spiritual level where, you know, you just see it and it's this huge. She just basically expands it to, you know, this guy is the protector and he kind of represents all of the people who protect us every day.
Exactly.
And they have to be these people and make these hard choices and do these hard, skillful things and live with the consequences.
Yeah, there's a cost, and I thought it was interesting how it did that. And it was kind of curious because of that. I felt like it made the villain more important because the villain ended up being an embodiment of death, kind of destruction. You know, he's not just a villain, and he's not just revenge. He's this Thanos-like character where he's this embodiment of doom. You know. And we've got this interesting...
Which one, Henry Cavill or Solomon Lane?
Solomon Lane.
Okay.
Because Henry Cavill is more of a... Henry Cavill is more of an enabler of death.
Kind of, yeah.
But the other guy is really... And that's why he doesn't care. The guy who embodies death, he's like... He doesn't really agree with Henry Cavill, but he's using him.
Yeah.
And Henry Cavill's kind of okay with it because it gives him power. But that's about it, you know, and that's a funny thing.
Henry Cavill has a goal in mind. Solomon Lane had a goal and has forgotten it, kind of in the face of revenge, or at least that's kind of the way that
his goal is death. That's what I'm saying, you know, and that's what's so interesting about him going to the end there, not wanting to make it, you know, and it makes him kind of a compelling villain in a way that not all of the Mission Impossible villains are, you know.
Again, he believed what he was saying.
Right.
He's
so much that he
zealot,
feels he fits in it. Yep. You know, he's like, death for everybody, and I don't care if I die. I'm going to die too, you know. I'll go with you guys. It's it's worth it, right? But I think that makes it for an interesting feeling when I got through the end of that movie, and I was like, this is kind of an interesting nod to the or an interesting, how do you put it, exploration of this whole idea that as a good guy, you know, you have moral responsibility. You should be trying to help everybody. And Ethan Hunt's trying to do everything. He really is. And he needs help. And that's pretty obvious.
Well, I also felt like that was, I think one of the reasons that it comes across so strongly is that it really is so sincere. And that's one of the a lot of recent spy movie. I mean, it's been, moral ambiguity has been in spy movies since the beginning, but there's a lot of emphasis on the whole, you know, don't trust anybody. But this movie, and especially the Mission Impossible movies in general, there's lots of twists and turns to the story, but they're really about these teams of people that trust each other so fully, and them learning to do that. You don't really, you never watch, you know, I don't watch this movie thinking, you know, man, I wonder if, you know, Luther is gonna betray everyone at the last second, or I wonder if, you know, Benji's going to turn out to be the villain. Is like, no, that's not going to happen. Why? Because the whole half the fun of this movie is that you have all these people working together as, you know, a team, as a, you know, a family, as siblings, as brothers in combat. You know, even you know, even when they have problems in the relationship, like with Ilsa Faust and Ethan and the rest of them, and she's kind of like out there, you know, they pretty much know that in some ways she's totally trustworthy, and in other ways she's really not. But she's not the kind of person who would necessarily lie to them without a good reason, and so they pretty much it's really easy for them to forgive her because they figure we're all in the same boat, kind of. And it's a very opposite sort of thing from like one of the Bourne movies, which are, you know, just really almost totally lacking in that respect. And it really, it's like after the first couple of times you watch the Bourne movies, I start to lose my interest because they're just not fun that way, you know? Yeah. They I mean, they're good. I like them, but it's just it's like you have to watch them in a special mood.
Yeah, that's true. But it's interesting because like I was saying, he embodies this character, but he embodies somebody we know. Like, we all know somebody like this. Like, my younger brother is very much like a Ethan Hunt sort of character, where you tell him the problem and he's like, oh shoot, and so he goes and he solves the problem. He didn't talk to you about it, but he's gonna go and try and solve that problem. He's gonna do his darnest. He's gonna die trying. And every time he will die trying, and it's very interesting to meet those kind of people. It's not everybody, it's just not everybody, but it's funny when you do meet them, because you kind of get this weird feeling like you should be helping them out. You know what I'm talking about, Craig?
Yeah.
You know some people like that, or they just kind of
like your brother
do stuff. Yeah, I mean, you tell them, and they're like, "Oh, dang, that's the problem. It's my problem."
Pick any of the soldiers. If anybody knows somebody or has a relative in the armed forces or whatever, you meet some of those people, and they're very much like this. They're just these kind of hyper competent, laid back people, and I mean, not all of them are this absurdly competent, but they have that same kind of aura where it's like, there's a lot of them are just, you'll ask them, hey, how'd your day go, and it's like things are very, they're not super tense or anything, but they just have this confidence to them, and when they do something, they often tend to just, you're like, oh, hey, can you do that? Oh, it's already done. You did it. Wow, that was quick. How'd you do that?
Right.
I feel like it's kind of this sort of John McClane mindset where they go, well, no one else is there to do it, so I'm going to do it. If someone else could do it, I would let them do it, but I guess I got to do it.
John McClane.
It's interesting.
Yeah, John McClane is almost like kind of the other side of that same coin, where he's not
very similar to Tom Cruise in a lot of ways.
He's not the best at everything, but he does have he represents more the sort of scruffy, plucky sort of hero. He confronts similar types of problems and similar scales, actually, by the time the series is coming to an end, but he still is approaching it with this sort of like, everything, if all you have is a hammer, everything is a nail, and you're like, yeah, that should be a disadvantage, but he's sort of like, yeah, but all I have is a hammer, so
yeah,
what are you gonna do?
Well, and that's kind of the picture I was feeling when I was watching this movie. Watch Fallout, and I came to the end of it, and a lot of times I feel like Mission Impossible doesn't get behind the mask. It's like I go overseas and I talk to people, and they're like, oh, I had this weird conversation with a relative of mine overseas, and we were out there, we're talking about various different things, and I sat down and I was like, we were talking about some moral issue, right? And I said, well, Americans don't have all the answers, and they're like, if America doesn't know how to solve this, no one does.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, you could have heard a pin drop. I mean, I was like,
it is,
I was like, wow.
It's sort of like if you put that in a movie, though, somebody would. It's like some people would just go, "What are you talking about?"
That's offensive.
Right, right.
It's like that's it.
She was dead serious. Yeah. And I was like, whoa.
It wasn't like something we prompted or anything. Right. She just said that and went, well, if they can't figure it out, who's gonna figure it out? And we're just like, oh, people do say that. Look at that. Yeah. I didn't know people said that. Well, they do.
And it's, I mean, it's like, it's funny how that works out. And they see the United States as something a little bit different than the way we see it. We're inside the thing. And I know all of us are Americans here, but, maybe not everybody listening is. But, you guys, if you are out overseas, you see the world a little bit differently than we do. And a lot of times the United States can be this monolithic thing.
Or we think we are.
And it looks like this Mission Impossible thing, right? Where we just take on crazy stuff that nobody does. Nobody does that. And nobody solves that problem. And American does it. And you're like, how? I don't know. We turn our friends into our enemies into our friends, and we solve problems, geopolitical problems that nobody would even try to solve.
And we can't do anything, but neither can Ethan Hunt. He doesn't have superpowers.
But behind that facade, and it's not really intended to be a facade, but behind that facade, we see it as this John McClane and Mission Impossible Fallout sort of world where everything is going wrong, and we're doing our best to kind of put out the fires, and we need help, a lot of times. Yeah. And it's kind of a funny, I don't know, I just see that in the American mindset, where we're kind of seeing it that way, and we're like, I don't know how to do this all sometimes. Yeah,
that makes sense, and that's also one of those things that kind of separates Ethan Hunt from sort of James Bond kind of character. It's like James Bond handles. It's like he handles world-ending stuff because, or at least for the purposes of the plot, it's like the reason they diverge it from reality to let him save the world because you're supposed to be like, yeah, James Bond, he's so cool. But when you have, and that's cool, it really is. That's why we still make James Bond films. But when you have Ethan Hunt do it, it's like when you're playing Call of Duty, you know, and they have the QuickTime event, and it's like that one scene at the end of a film, and you have to snipe 5 guys with a pistol while flying through the air or something, and you have to not hit all the hostages, and it's just a problem. It's just a problem. It's an unglamorous, it's a terrible situation. It's impossible. That's what the whole name. Mission
and a Modern
Impossible.
Warfare 1, and
it's like,
and Zakhaev is capping your friends over there, and Price is dying on the floor next to you, and he slides you his pistol.
Over, and then you bam.
It's not glamorous, but we get to shoot the bad guy and all his friends.
It's like that's the sense I get watching a Mission Impossible movie is that it's almost like a Call of Duty mission where you just play, where you see a playthrough and somebody's cut out all the deaths. You know, it's like I almost wish we had like some like outtakes or something where, you know, you see Ethan Hunt going through all the different things and then he fails and then he has to reload the stage and go through it again.
That does happen a few times.
What I mean? It's like where he has to, it's like objective, skydive and save Henry Cavill while only having 1 breath of air. You have to give him your air. And it's like, and it's like, you know, you're down at the bottom and it's like, damn it, I have 2 seconds of air left. And then finally it's like the parachute catches on the thing and it's like, okay, finally I can breathe. You know, it is like, damn it, I failed like 3 times. You know,
I did hold my breath for that scene.
It's like
that
he
was
passes out. What?
I did hold my breath for that scene just to see if I could.
People do that.
That
one
wasn't too bad.
Have you noticed? It's like everybody as a kid did that during like the water scenes.
Did you ever try that, Craig?
I tried on Finding Nemo.
Yeah. Oh gosh, dude. That explains why you're so blue.
Yeah. Everybody did. I mean, like whenever they go up above the waves, and it's like whenever people hold their breath in a movie, you know, you feel kind of compelled to just see like, hey, could he do that? And you do that yourself. You know, hold your breath.
If I'm just laying there completely still and like my heart rate's at a normal pace, then I could probably do it. But I wouldn't be able to do it and swim around like they are.
Yeah, Finding Nemo?
Yeah. Well, Finding Nemo. Unrealistic expectations. I don't think that's
CGI, man.
But what do you think of that idea, Craig, with the United States sort of, or I guess Mission Impossible being this sort of like an analog to, you know, trying to save the world from a geopolitical sort of standpoint?
I don't understand the question.
I don't know. Sorry, guys.
No.
I'm the engineer. I got to think about how I phrase
Can you bring it down to a fifth grade
say,
reading level?
I would say from
Are you smarter than a 5th grader, Craig?
I would say from the filmmaker's point of view, what they're really focusing on is this as a universal thing.
No,
and it kind of inadvertently means. It tends to mean the United States just because Ethan Hunt tends to be that guy. But obviously the British are also portrayed as having a similar type thing. And, you know, you've got Ilsa Faust, and she's the same kind of person trained to do the same kind of thing as Ethan is.
She shows him up quite often.
Yeah, and that's but it's just a thing. You know, it's like it's just a thing about being in any country, you know, that you have armed forces and that there's legitimate and not legitimate uses for any of them. Yeah. And so I think they emphasize America, but just remember, it's a part of that is that Cold War roots, and it works really well also because it's in America and it works for, you know, we're Americans, and that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing.
Right.
And
well, I think
that's about where
I mean, I came out of the theater. I wasn't really thinking about it from a America standpoint. I was thinking about more of from just a masculine standpoint. That's something that men try to do. You know?
Yeah, and that applies to everybody.
And something I thought was unique that I have not seen in hardly any movie. It was, you know, the Elsa Faust character and Julia. You know, the way they approached people like Ethan Hunt in that movie was kind of like, well, he's crazy, but he needs help. You know, and I thought that was an interesting sort of conversation. I mean, did you guys find that kind of interesting, compelling, that discussion they have between the two of them?
I thought I'm surprised we haven't talked about it yet, about the whole. I had no idea. I knew that they were going to do it, sort of, but I didn't know how they were going to do it. They were going the way that the series was going. They wanted Ethan and Ilsa Faust to be a thing. But at the same time,
they waited a whole movie, so I give them a little bit of credit.
I give them a lot of credit for that, because it was sort of like on this meta level where they wanted things to change, because I guess which one's the actress? Michelle Monaghan?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
and
I think so.
who's
Yeah,
playing
these
Julia?
I have no idea.
And she's just not.
Looking it up.
She's just,
Tom Cruise
as
person?
far as I can tell, she's not a action oriented actress, and that's just not what she wants to do. And that's you know what, that's actually, I'm glad that she knows what she's good at and what she wants to do. And it also wouldn't have been quite as natural for the progression of the character for her to suddenly become this, you know, hyper badass equal to Ethan Hunt, who has done this for his entire life.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have
And-
believed that. I mean, that
Yeah.
whole like relationship
And,
didn't make sense to me that way.
I thought it made a lot of sense, but it mainly made sense in the context of MI3, where he's trying to get out and have a normal life, and instead, you know, they changed that. And so it's like, on one level, it's like I think it's really sad that they broke up, and that it's kind of unrealistic that they're going to have them all. Everybody's fine. They had this whole this scene is just, look, everybody's fine. Everybody's fine. Everybody's fine. Everybody's fine. Everybody's fine. With
yeah,
it. It's
they
good, it's
worked
fine.
pretty hard at that. I agree.
But at the same time, it's well, it's fine. I'm fine with it.
I don't know. I thought it was a beautiful relationship between Ethan Hunt and Julia.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Like it was like,
Yeah, they didn't abuse it by just killing her off. Is that
Right,
see that was the
exactly.
alternative, I guess.
it was a very, like, I don't know. It was kind of heartbreaking that what he has to do. You know, he cares so much that, you know, he can't be there with her all the time, and he wants her to have a normal life, and he's happy for her and her new husband and all that. But it's just like, part of me is just heartbroken that they can't be together, because in my mind, I don't think him and Elsa are good. She was kind of selfish. Like when Luther told her, look, he can't focus on you right now. He cares too much. And if he cares too much, you're going to push him past the point that he can't care about enough people. And she's like, well, I'm going with you anyways. So, I mean, I understand why she did it, and she needed to be there, but it still felt like she was still being a little bit selfish about it. Whereas like Julia's all like,
I'm incidentally
She's just
here.
perfect
I
on a
might as
dime.
well help.
yeah, exactly. She's just perfect. But
It's like, why would you let that go? Don't.
Yeah,
he
he was,
had
he was
to,
an
because
idiot.
for
We'll
her-
agree with that. Yeah.
Well,
and it's like
yeah.
that's that
See,
line
that's
that
that's
she
why
said.
I'm saying
Yeah.
it's still, mainly I think the reason they did that was on the meta level, because they wanted to be able to have them work together and have, you know, sort of dynamic duo thing going on in the next movie or whatever. And
Everybody just thinks everything needs to become Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which is sad because it doesn't
Well-
ever really pan out like that.
well, so, I think it's a lot better.
She's
than
dead
Mr.
in the
and
next
Mrs.
one
Smith.
for sure.
Oh,
Exactly, that's what I'm talking
yeah,
about.
but it's it's
Mr. and Mrs. Smith go to
Well,
Washington.
I actually think the idea of having, you know, a couple, you know, where you have, you know, the husband and the wife, or, you know, whatever, they're at least steady, and they do, you know, action things together is a really compelling idea, because it's at least getting past what all of the, like 90% of every other movie does, which is that it introduces the female character, they finally get together, and then, like, with James Bond, it's just kind of understood that by the next movie they're gone, and and half of them are, or I don't know, like a quarter of them are like just tragic, and the rest of them are just, they were the girl of this particular movie, and everybody's just fine, you know. It's like we just
Right.
were there for that like 1 second, and then we had some fun, and then it was bye bye.
We don't get to see the scene where, you know, the girl from, I don't know, you know, Golden Finger is now throwing shoes at him at the end. You know, it's like
Yeah,
they go to
exactly.
Casablanca, and
Yeah.
she's so mad at him that she's just throwing shoes at him, and then
Yeah, well,
he
I
leaves
mean-
in his British fashion, so he never talks about it.
Yeah, they really only have one exception to that, and that was the
Where they kill her
first
off.
James Bond movie that we saw as kids. Was
Where he gets married
in Her
and-
Majesty's Service, where he actually gets married at the end, and then Blofeld comes back and kills her, and that was that. It was terrible, and my dad.
Yeah.
My dad had this great sense for, like, hey, that was kind of fun. I don't remember any of the bad things that were in that. And then we'd watch it, and he hadn't seen it for like 15 years. And so we're all like young, and then we would see it, and he would be like, oh, I forgot about that. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yep.
it was like we had a sort of
All the movies change when you have kids.
We grew up sort of sheltered, but it was really spotty coverage.
So, same
there were some holes in the tarp.
Which I think was positive in the long run. You know, we knew some things were not appropriate, but we knew that they existed.
Yeah.
So we weren't shocked by their existence. You know, so that's a pretty good mindset to have, I think.
Yeah. So
it's like the same thing happened when we saw, what was it? Well, not the exact same thing, but was it Quigley Down Under? Remember that? And it was like, I don't know, when did we said, I don't think I was much older than 10 when we saw it, or maybe younger. And then we saw that movie, and you know, every
There's
now
a lot
and
of
then,
fast forwarding.
There was a lot of fast forwarding, but
mid,
that is one of the most. It's like I keep watching it over and over again, and every time I see it, it still holds up. It was an epic Western. That is one of the best, like, neo-Westerns I've ever seen. You know?
Yeah.
I would constantly be disappointed when I would see other movies with Tom Selleck in them, and they were not as awesome as that. It's like the John Wick of neo-Western.
That's true. It's better than John Wick, actually, I would say.
Mm-hmm. It's
kind of similar plot, though. It's very similar.
See, John Wick, the character, he's like, you have him.
John Wick. I've never seen that.
You have him. It's like you have John Wick.
Quigley Down Under?
No,
Quigley Down Under.
Quigley Down Under, starring Tom Selleck. What?
I don't know what that is.
Yeah,
I know who Tom Selleck is. I don't know.
It's a 90s. It's a 90s sort of. It was kind of a direct. I don't remember if it actually had a theater one. I think it had a theatrical run.
I'm pretty sure it did.
But excuse me.
Lovely.
Well, we know he's a person.
Sorry to digress a little bit. We're gonna actually come back to Mission Impossible. I'll quickly say this, but anyway, in the 90s, Tom Selleck was, and a little bit before, Tom Selleck was making a lot of kind of direct TV Westerns. There were a lot of them around this time, and they were kind of having a little bit of a comeback, and it
was like a weird spaghetti Western era.
It was the post-spaghetti Western era. See, that's a
post-spaghetti
Western movie,
and it's like French bread.
Right.
Yeah, French bread.
It's like the Wild Bunch. Remember the Wild Bunch with Emilio Estevez? You know?
Oh, got it.
Got it. And so it was like we'd already had all these gritty westerns, which were kind of, you know, inversions of the typical, you know, like Shane, you know, or whatever, and the John Wayne movies and stuff like this. This was after that with the Clint Eastwood, and everything's kind of morally ambiguous. And this was like the movie where, you know, people were making cool westerns like the Wild Bunch with Emilio Estevez and all those young guys, and they're all like rebels, but then you have Quigley Down Under, and Quigley Down Under has Tom Selleck as basically the Western equivalent of a sniper going to Afghanistan and fighting this rancher who wants to wipe out all the Aborigines in his area, and Tom Selleck is basically...
It's like getting hired by the Russians to kill Afghanis and then turning on them and killing all the Russians in Afghanistan.
But it is so definitely a Western because Tom Selleck is basically playing a character from the 50s. He's playing like Shane, John Wayne, Gary Cooper's character in High Noon, plus like some real Wild Bill Hickok with the mustache, and then it just like if you smush them all together and then stretch it out to 6'2", and then give him a giant rifle and then send him to Australia. You know, he's polite to everyone. He's nice. He has a lot of wit to him, but he's kind and he's like a knight. You know, he has such, you know, skill and kindness to all, and except for bad guys. And even then, you know, he gives them every chance to stop being bad before he has to murderate them from a half a mile away with his huge gun.
Yep. It's true.
Interesting. I'll have to research
this.
It's
well worth watching.
We'll have to do a whole episode on that movie. It's an amazing movie.
Like Battle LA is kind of fun.
It also
to
has
watch.
really excellent henchmen. I was talking about henchmen.
Oh, yeah,
Remember
yeah.
that movie has really excellent henchmen in it. Anyway, okay, and it has Alan Rickman,
it is Alan Rickman is the villain,
all right,
and he's
so
very good.
You go on and then we'll cut, and then you say the last thing you were going to say, and then we'll go on to our final segment.
What was I going to say? Where was I?
I'm sorry.
There's going to be a lot of stuff to get cut out.
Yeah.
I was going to say something, and I can't remember what it was.
Ah, dang it.
Something about henchmen.
I'm sorry I talked over you.
Was it about something?
It was before the henchmen?
It was before the henchmen.
Oh, you said it was about Battle LA.
Yeah, Battle LA.
Battle. It's sort of like, you know, Battle LA is kind of fun to watch and like not that great, but it's fun to watch. Quigley Down Under is like 9 out of 10 movie score for me. Like it's way up there.
It's high.
Yeah, it's way up there.
Yeah, it was made for pretty cheap too, but it was still an excellent movie. I love it.
Like it's Anyway.
While we're on the subject of
Movies we've never
Tom
seen.
Selleck,
Yeah.
Oh, Tom Selleck.
did you guys ever watch the Sackett Brothers?
No.
I feel like I
It was,
did.
It was Tom Selleck.
Maybe.
It had Sam
Elliott,
Sam
and they're
Elliott.
both right. I remember this.
They're like brothers, and there's like a younger brother, and they were all
I think I
like,
do remember.
yeah,
this now.
they go. They're like
They're
Civil War
killed.
veterans, but they were on the opposite sides, and then they.
And then I
and
did see
then
this. Yes.
they get-
yes.
That's
I
kind
have-
of a.
It's like
I have it on the double VHS video, so there's 2 VHSs. It's like
yeah.
it's a big old thing case.
That's
for-
funny. That's funny.
But
It's better than that.
it's my favorite
That
Tom
was-
Selleck movie.
It's better
was
than
what?
that. So we might.
It
we might-
was.
we
Yeah,
might
that one
replace it
and
for
that
you.
one was fairly good as well.
was
but
pretty
this
good,
one's-
but this one was
one's
better.
like this was a yeah. What?
I doubt it.
Okay. We'll have to have a movie night.
So for our last segment, we're going to be just kind of rattle off some of our favorite moments from the entire franchise and why we liked them so much across Mission Impossible, all the movies. Everything's fair game. Go for it. Why don't we start with you, Matt? You definitely had one in mind.
Yeah, I think John asked this earlier, and I was like, oh, I have one, and it's the I like a lot of a number of the Mission Impossible movies almost equivalently well because I like how the plots go, but the best scene, in my opinion, is the scene in the end of Mission Impossible 3 when he's got a bomb in his head and it's about to go off, and he takes the time to sit down and explain to her how to shoot I guess it was a Beretta.
Yeah.
An M9 Beretta as he's losing his mind. And it was just this, that when I saw that scene, I don't think I had even seen the whole movie, and I just saw that scene apart from some other parts, and it was such a weird scene to watch. And that has, of all the scenes I've ever seen in a Mission Impossible movie, that one had the biggest impact. I don't know why exactly.
That was definitely one of the most memorable ones that
Yeah.
I remember.
But he just like hands the gun to her. He says, "This is how you reload, and I'm gonna die now. Bring me back in a minute." You know?
Yeah.
That's right.
And this is kind of related to sort of the timer thing I was talking about. And you notice this, like, Owen Damien is killed like 10 seconds before, and we don't even stop.
Also,
Yeah.
that is actually one of my favorite scenes. Is when Owen Damien, he's beating up Tom Cruise because Tom Cruise's brain is on fire, basically. And
Yeah.
he's like, haha, I'm the big man now. And he's like kicking and beating him up.
Yeah.
And then they stumble into the street and he just gets run over by a van. Like,
Yeah.
when I saw that scene, like, first time, I was like, oh, yes, yes, take that, you son of a gun. Like, I was so, like, it's just like, there's scenes where it's like,
Yep.
there's a bad guy killed that you've been
Right.
waiting to be killed for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yep.
and then it happens, and it's just like such a smooth, satisfying way. And you're like, I want you to die slowly because you're such a jerk. But in this case, that's fine.
Well,
'Cause, like,
I'm happy
I'm
because
happy
you got
with that.
Yeah.
you got crushed by it.
Did you know?
Oh, wow.
You notice that that's almost exactly the way it happens in Speed.
No,
Did you ever
not.
see
Yes,
Speed?
I too
No.
remember this.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of when
I
you
won't-
mentioned
I won't
that.
spoil
Craig.
it more than that, but
was
basically
funny.
that was one of the earlier Keanu Reeves movies, action stuff, and it's very.
Who?
It's kind of similar to Mission Impossible 1, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's very similar. Those were all made kind of around the same time. It was kind of based on the. It was pitched as everybody says the pitch was it's Die Hard on a bus,
Yeah.
and
It's where Keanu Reeves
I'm
is on a
familiar
bus
with the
driving.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
Never
I
watched
saw it a
it all the
long
way.
time ago. It wasn't quite as memorable as a lot of these others, but it was a really good movie, and but yeah, they have the villain, and he's also that sort of villain that messes with you a bunch, and anyway. Spoiler alert for
what's yours?
Speed.
You can't pick a scene from
Pushes-
Speed.
Speed.
Sorry,
Speed.
you can't pick a scene from Speed when you were talking about Mission Impossible scenes.
I know. I'm just saying that was exactly the same way that he dies. Spoiler alert. He's just basically they're rolling around, and then Keanu Reeves pushes his face up, and it gets taken off by a sign. Basically, he has a really good one-liner after
He
it
does.
too.
I can't remember it right now.
It's like
Is
the
he
guy,
shorter now
the
or
bad guy
something?
is telling him how much better he is at everything.
Well, now you're shorter. That's
And-
what he
well,
says.
No, he said, and then he does that, and he takes the guy's head off, and Keanu Reeves is like completely wiped out. He's just, and he like leans over and goes, yeah. Well, I'm taller.
I got it. That's right. I remember now.
It was the best.
It was such a Keanu Reeves line, but it was
and,
funny.
sorry, just distracted. I haven't. My favorite scene. That if I can't pick that one, that was a really good one, and I think that's really just a good movie scene because it's really that is a very primal, action movie type, fear is
Yep.
that
Yep.
oh, I'm going to be knocked out of action, and now this the person I'm trying to protect has to step up to the plate, and I've got to give them whatever I can to let them do it, and then it's just like, roll the dice, man. I'm going to be dead, and then I come back, and it's like,
well, you spend this whole time relying on Ethan Hunt to get you through this stuff, and now it's Julia,
right?
It's like it's like okay,
it's not even like Benji or somebody. It's Julia, and it's
right with less training than anybody else,
right?
Yeah,
and that scene really connects with you. That movie has several moments like that where they're just really, really stressful emotionally, and it really works. It really does.
I have one in mind from that movie specifically, and it's when Philip Seymour Hoffman or Damien he's on the plane and he's
he chunks him away.
Yeah. Well, no, he's sitting on the plane. And he's like, I'm going to push you out of this plane if you don't. And he cuts him, and the guys, and it's just such a powerful. It shows you how bad he is. He doesn't even care. He's not scared. He's not like, I'm going to talk now, And Tom Cruise is like, I'm going to cut you. You're going to fall. And then Luther has to pull him back, and all that Damien has to say is, I have Julia or whatever. If you cut me, she dies. Or
I don't think he even says
I
that.
I think he just says that you should have let me fall out.
Yeah, he says you should have let me fall out, and that's one of the scary things about him is because he's like
that's what it was.
He's like this anti Ethan Hunt. You know what I mean? Like Ethan Hunt is this I take care of everything and I handle everything, and now he's saying I'm going to handle you.
Yeah,
and that's like, oh boy.
What's more, he does sound very much like it's like when you hear.
I had flashbacks of a Joker character when I heard.
Obviously, I haven't. Well, yeah, it's interesting that when you see movies and you see villains in movies and they're often really played up and stuff, but when you hear like a really bad person in real life, like you meet someone and then you suddenly realize that they're just, at least in this situation, that they're completely amoral, and you're gonna either have to fight them, well, whatever, verbally or legally or physically or whatever, is most. Everybody's met people like that and gone, holy crap, who am I sitting next to, And they don't really talk real loud, they say things that are nuts, but they say them in this totally deadpan, controlled way, like, yeah, I'm gonna do that to you. They don't say, yeah, I'm gonna do that to you. You see what I'm saying?
Those are the people who run away when you wave your
exactly. It's
weapon of whatever.
Yeah, it's like
wave a baseball bat and they've got a 45 and they're like, oh my gosh, run, stand off distance.
Excellent. Put some space between you and like.
Right.
And I reverberate.
Okay, now I have to
You're
actually
louder than everyone else.
Now I have to pick. Now I have to pick an actual scene.
Yeah,
and,
that's what I was struggling.
If I had to, it is.
That's my scene. You guys can't
really
change it.
good scenes.
Well, I think mine is Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yep.
Heading out the back of the plane, just being like,
oh yeah.
He goes, you should have killed me when you had the chance.
That was a pretty hardcore scene.
I think if I had to pick a scene, let me think. One I like that's definitely a high competitor. I liked a lot of scenes from that.
It's also hard because you just watched the most recent one and you're like, I really liked a lot of that one.
Yeah.
Maybe in Mission Impossible 1 when he's like.
I was
when he's sitting there with the interview with
one.
the director guy, and he's like having this conversation. He's realizing they're gonna pin it on him, and so he puts the explosives together.
Gum together.
That was a pretty cool scene to me.
It was really cool.
Hasta lasagna, don't get any on you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there were a lot of moments where I saw the TV version of Mission Impossible at a fairly young age, and so I think I need to see it again to know what would be a favorite. See, favorite doesn't always mean best; it just means the one that made the greatest impact on you.
Right.
And I think a couple of the greatest things about that movie were just that you were immediately. I remember watching that film and being immediately. I wasn't even familiar with a lot of spy thrillers. I hadn't seen a lot of James Bond movies even, so I didn't know where they were coming from. I just knew that there was a guy named Ethan Hunt, and he looks kind of like me, and he's the main character, and I can kind of identify with that. And
he's significantly shorter.
Yeah, well, yeah. I was pretty short at the time. And
that's true, I guess.
And it seemed like every scene he walked into, he didn't know what was going on, and I didn't know what was going on. And there were little things that he would catch that would get him out of that scene and into the next one, but it wasn't always, he didn't always have a complete picture. And so there was always like two levels of things going on, which was I'm trying to figure out what's going on, and I'm trying to survive, and I'm trying to do the right thing, you know?
Yeah.
And all of those really came together in this way that really just, I could feel it and I could see it, and I was sitting there replaying things in my head, and I didn't even play a lot of video games at the time, but I was thinking, what would I do? What would I do? What would I do? You know, could I plank, you know, 3 inches from the reactive floor and just hold my hands out and go, and then there's like a drop hanging, it's about to fall out, and I would just mentally,
6 inches in his hand,
and you have to have your hand get in the way in time, and it's like, and so I think that if I'm just picking one scene from the movie, maybe the scene where he's hanging from the rope in the
vault, the CIA.
To get the knock list.
Yeah.
And
the knock list.
Right.
What a name.
Yeah. and he's just trying to it's one little test after another.
Yeah.
And the tension is just going, whoa, and I'm sitting there going, I know he's going to do it, but could I do it?
Oh, and then there's the
You know?
rat in the ventilation shaft, which caused him to fall.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the guy almost drops him.
Right.
That was,
You know,
that was
yeah.
a funny part to me,
vault
because I'm like sitting there going, how would I do that? And I was like, I think I would just ignore the rat. You know, just ignore the rat, man.
Right.
Just ignore the rat. It
I'm
can
scared of rats.
start chewing on your foot. Yeah, I was like, is this like a oh gosh, was it Indiana Jones thing where he's like afraid of snakes? You know,
But he's afraid of rats.
the rat's dead. You never would have made it past the rats.
Yeah.
No, there were rats. Anyway, I don't
So
remember.
yeah, that's another good memorable moment.
In this one, I really enjoyed that last fight scene with.
Wait, did you give your scene? You already.
Like
yeah.
in the most recent one, this Mission Impossible one, I really liked two parts of it. I liked the way that relationship between, it's not really a scene, but Ethan Hunt and his ex-wife and the other girl, how they figured that out.
Elsa
Was
Faust.
it? Yeah, Elsa Faust. It was
This
impressive.
is like my job.
I
during
thought it
this
was an
podcast, is to
impressive.
remember Rebecca Ferguson's character's name and tell
There you
it to
go.
people.
Just remember names in general.
But I thought it was impressive how they figured that out, because it worked, and it worked better than I was not sure how they were going to get out of that, and it was a hole they dug themselves into, and they came up with a good way of doing it, I think.
Yeah.
And the other thing was that fight scene in the end with Superman was pretty interesting. So,
Superman.
That's what Batman vs Superman should have been.
that's right. That's what it should have been like. Exactly.
But no,
Yep.
I like that. But actually, my favorite fight scene might have been been in
from
the
latest
bathroom.
movie?
Oh
Yeah.
gosh, that was a great.
It was, and it was cool because I liked seeing the fighting styles of you have the brawler, you have
Yeah.
the dude who like takes his jacket off, puffs his sleeves, and is like, I'm gonna beat the living daylights out of you. And then there's obviously the more like. I don't know what Ethan's style of fighting is.
Ethan
but
Hunt is a
Frantic, skilled karate
MMA.
master.
He's probably
Something like that.
a mix of Krav and
Yeah.
Kung Fu.
That's I was gonna say something more Croft because it's all like about grapples and
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but dude, that fake John Locke was like a match and a half. For him.
Holy smokes, yeah, that
he-
dude.
well, and it was like a lot of people. I had several friends who complained. They go, I didn't like that because Tom Cruise is supposed to be like one of the best, and it's like, well, he's trying to take that guy alive. That guy's not trying to take him alive. That
Yeah,
dude
it's
is
true.
trying to kill them both or
Yeah.
survive.
That's got to at least double your,
right.
difficulty level.
And
Well, and not only that, what I was sitting there realizing
What's his
as
face
this
has gotten
whole
away.
fight starts is that, let's put it this way: Ethan Hunt is a specialized individual.
Yeah.
He's not a martial arts monster. He is a martial arts monster, but that's not all he does.
He also
He
runs.
juggles. Yeah, he
lot.
can pick your lock, go in, program your computer to
pretend to be you.
Yeah, to pretend to be you and do like 5 different
He's an
things,
actor.
and then walk away and do 67 other things.
Yeah.
He can't, he rock climbs. He can't do everything. Right? I'm sitting there going, oh, he didn't have enough time to practice
Yeah.
his jujitsu before this thing broke down.
Exactly.
He's a jack of all trades, master of kick-ass.
Yeah. But the Superman character is supposed to be this whole
Well,
knock you down sort
he's
of
an
guy.
assassin.
Yeah, he's an assassin. That's all he does.
But that was
you know.
I
Built
really
for it,
love
he's
the
trained for it.
It
He acts
made him
like it.
kind of
That's his
scary
job. He
compared to
focuses.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah, I love that
you know.
choreography and that,
Yeah.
like, just the difference between how he was like Tom Cruise
Yeah.
is like oh man, and there's not a second of doubt in Henry
Yeah.
Cavill's mind where he's like I'm going to beat the living daylights out of this guy.
Yeah.
He just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
he just like puffs his cuffs and he's like, "That's it, we're going down." He does that really cool just
Yeah.
shake move where he's like, my sleeves are coming down.
Yeah,
my fists are
that's
out.
like the first image that comes to my mind. I think they had
Yeah.
that in the trailer too.
Yeah.
That one shot, and he just like
He's
is like he looks like that.
Guns
He
out.
looks like that. he
Sun's
looks
out,
like that
guns out.
picture on the front that's like on the logo for the Art of Manliness
Yeah.
website.
Yeah, no.
It's just like yeah,
It's funny.
Marcus of Queensberry rules.
But yeah, like he just did that, and I was like, "Oh, that was such a cool." And it was such a cool like fight scene with all the other things. Obviously, there are parts of it. It's like, all right, that's not how people fight, but
Yeah, no, there was some definitely parts of that.
but it was just a really cool dynamic, and
There's a lot of character to each of the participants,
Oh,
which is not
absolutely.
always easy to do.
but it comes out so well in that
Oh,
fight.
yeah, oh, yeah.
It was literally it showed the difference between the hammer
I agree,
and the
that's true.
scalpel. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
it's like
that's for sure.
Tom Cruise is all precise
And the crazy person.
and then the hammer's just like, I'm just gonna hit this guy 15 times in the exact same spot.
Yep, yep.
And just beat him to a crisp. And just
Well, and
see
then
what
there's this
happens.
little Asian guy who's just going crazy.
Dude,
you know?
yeah. That guy was awesome. That guy did an awesome job of
Oh,
just
yeah.
having a different character of just like, I'm a master fighter and I'm gonna beat you up.
Yep, yep.
So that was probably one of my favorite scenes. Is just seeing that fight dynamic, and I kind of
I like how the
wish
girl walks in and she's just like,
blows his brains
she blows
away.
his brains out. Yeah. And then they're all like, "Why did you do
like,
that?
Damn it!
It was
She's
going well." She's
"Sorry."
like, "Really, really?"
So,
Yeah.
but,
And then the gay jokes, of course.
I kind of yeah, right. That's funny. I do kind of wish that they could have had more of that dynamic of that, like Tom Cruise teaming up with Henry Cavill. I can't even remember his character's name.
You know what? I was thinking that
I
too. It
can't
was just
either,
it
yeah.
was like he's
I can look it up, but I don't want to.
they have the
It was something very. It worked.
they
for
were
his character, but I
definitely
can't remember
playing
what it
with
was.
the how you say the genre expectations. You can even see in the trailer like they're playing with the idea that this time Tom Cruise is really gonna go rogue instead of
Walker.
just like how he does in every single one of the
name was
Mission Impossible
Walker?
movies. What?
His name is Walker.
Oh, right, yeah, the
Okay, can you
character's
guess
name
what
is
his
Rock-
first name is? So knowing his second name. I don't think I've heard his first name.
I forgot.
August.
August Walker.
That doesn't make any sense.
No,
I
it
might have
doesn't.
heard
I
it
don't,
once.
that doesn't ring a bell. I've never heard his first name.
The only
in that
thing I
movie.
can think
think
of
he
with
said it-
August,
I
it
think
makes
they
me
said
think
it
of a
once.
revolution.
It makes me think of August Rush.
It sounds to
August.
me like an alias, is what it sounds like.
But yeah, it's August Walker. It says his
Like
name,
John Locke.
according to IMDb.
Locke.
But yeah, I didn't realize that was his first name. So
No, I didn't either.
It feels like
Huh,
something that
funny.
just fell between the cracks, at least for me, anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that. That was definitely.
I thought it was kind of silly that the knife and dagger part is where he's like, "And now I will give you information that Ethan. I will set up Ethan Hunt as this like. I don't know. That just is weird to me.
Yeah, but that also part was kind of like confirmed he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it needed to happen. It just didn't. I don't know if it had to happen quite like that.
I don't think it had to happen. I don't.
No,
think,
actually, you're right. I don't think
you
it had
could-
to happen.
I
yeah.
think you could have cut that scene out altogether, and you go, well, who traded him? Because they asked that question. Well, who gave her that information?
Right.
And it's
They
like,
kind of
I
gave a
don't
little too
know.
much information there,
think so,
maybe.
too.
Yeah.
I thought it was all right because I think the reason they kept it, I think, was because they wanted. I mean, they didn't want to feel like they were just pulling it out of their ass at the last second when he does. I mean, because it's almost like almost 2/3 of the way through the
I
movie
still don't
when
feel like it
that
would have pulled
happens.
out of the ass. I feel like it would have been like
in there.
because
And-
almost
but
every
the-
movie they question
the other thing-
is Ethan a bad guy?
I mean, donkeys are big. They're hard to pull. You know?
Well, you almost never think that Ethan is a bad guy in
You
any
guys can't hear, but I'm rolling my eyes.
movie. Yeah. Yeah.
Language.
But it does seem like you have some kind of a similar thing with Alec Baldwin's character in the last movie where I
did like Alec Baldwin's character.
You
Like,
almost feel like,
in
hey,
spite of
he's
myself,
such a-
I did
he's
like
such a jerk. Maybe he's working with the bad guys. I don't know. And then it's like suddenly he understands, and then he decides he's going to switch sides because things have gotten so crazy, and obviously Ethan is telling the truth. But I think the reason they did it is because they wanted you to keep wondering when Cavill was going to pull the trigger, and then when it seems like he's and then they flip
did
your
add nice
expectations
tension
by
to that
having
scene.
the
I will give
team
them that.
flip. Basically, they turn the tables on him before he turns the tables on them.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting. That was the surprise. In other words, the surprise is not supposed to be that Henry Cavill's a bad guy. You're never really asked to like him. he was always the guy who, you know, would have to learn to appreciate Tom Cruise's character. But it was, but the twist was that Tom Cruise has figured it out in the, you know, in that 2/3 of the movie, but he hasn't told you yet.
Right.
Did you guys? Did
Which
it
is
surprise
clever.
you that Alec Baldwin's character dies?
That was kind of the it was like that was kind of the double twist at the end of that.
I was kind of like,
that-
he should have
and,
died, maybe.
well,
It was
it
kind of
was-
sad. I liked his.
It was.
I liked his character.
If they were going
Yeah.
to kill somebody off, though, I would have definitely picked him
man.
just because.
But I would have loved to see him and Cavill go toe to toe, like boxer style. Like, I feel like he's also that same style of fighter where he's just like, brush my sleeves off and we're just gonna go at it. I would have loved to see that.
Yeah, that would have been fun.
Let's just have an MMA matchup of Henry Cavill and Alec Baldwin.
Unfortunately, Alec Baldwin will come out in little pieces.
Oh,
but
for sure.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
it'll be fun to watch until it happens.
Until he dies.
Yeah.
Sorry. Anyways,
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
cool.
good movie.
All right.
Yeah. All right. So I guess we'll just wrap up now.
Time to do the.
Time for the outro. Well, this has been the Fulton Podcast. Please ring the bell and subscribe if you'd like to support us. You can buy my book in the link in the description below. And if you like the show, leave us a comment. And if you didn't like it, well, you can also leave us a comment if you really want to, you know. Until next time, I've been John Fulton,
I'm Matthew Fulton.
I'm Craig Birchett.
and we'll see y'all later.
Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. There's the song right here.